welcome back to Teen Story Share. This week we're going to be reading from The Light in Hidden Places by Sharon Cameron. This is a historical fiction book based on a true story. The main character, Stefania Podgorska, is a Catholic Polish girl. At the outbreak of World War II, she has been working for a Jewish family, the Diamants, for the past several years. And when they get forced into the ghetto, that leaves Stefania on her own, taking care of her younger sister. And one night, a member of the Diamant family knocks on the door. And that's how they get into the business of hiding and protecting Jewish people. They take in 12 more Jewish people over the course of the war. And then one night, the Gestapo knocks on the door and requisitions their house for a German family. That happened a lot during the war. People's houses got taken over. So they're in the strange position, Stefania and her sister, of having 13 Jewish people hidden at the top of their house. Two unsuspecting Nazi Germans living on the lowest floor of their house, and Stefania and her sister in the middle. And if you want to find out what happens, you'll have to read The Light in Hidden Places. But we are going to read the first 2 chapters today. Chapter 1. Schmitz, Poland, November 1942. Someone is out there, in the dark. I open my eyes. And the dark is the same as always, a blank page. I can smell the cabbage Emilika had boiled 2 floors below us. Feel the sigh beside me that is my sister's sleeping breath. But the dark has also changed. There's an echo inside it, a sound my ears have missed. Someone is here. Now I am awake. I fold back the blanket, quiet, listening, stretching my legs to the floor. A mattress spring pops like a gunshot. My sister breathes, but she doesn't stir. If someone is here, they are not in this room. I tiptoe barefoot across the boards and put a finger to the edge of the rug I've nailed over the window. The streetlights glare, hard bits of snow glinting like dust as they fall through the light, but the sidewalk below my building is deserted. The windows across the street rows of dead eyes, dark with curtains and dresses and rugs, like mine are. In Schmitz, light is like a candy poster, and it's not smart to hang signs showing where the sweets are. I let the rug fall back into place and go to the door, pressing an ear to the wood before I turn the lock. The empty hall outside our room stretches to the other empty rooms of the empty apartment. As it should. Everything is as it should be. And then a noise shoots through the silence, louder than a gun, a grenade of fear inside my chest, and I know the sound I have missed. Someone is knocking on my front door. They know, they know, they know. The words beat with my blood. Another mattress spring pops, and I feel Helena coming up behind me. She doesn't speak. She is 6 years old and doesn't have to be told that this is not the time for questions. The knocking comes again, louder, this time with a whisper through the cracks. Stefania! It's a trick. The Gestapo want me to open the door without a fuss, so they don't have to break it down, so they can give a nice, unblemished apartment to some nice German officer and his law-abiding wife with clean hair and mended stockings. Maybe this means they will shoot us outside, like Mr. Schwarzer. The whisper comes again. Open the door! Fusha! The Gestapo do not know me by that name. I run for the door, hands out, fingers already searching for the newly repaired lock. I know it isn't him, it can't be him, but I fumble and twist at the lock anyway, then fling open the door. Helena gasps, or maybe the gasp comes from me, because the bare bulb hanging in the hallway has shown me that it's not him. It's not who I thought it would be at all. Max, I whisper. Chapter 2, 1936. My life before Schmitz was full of chickens and horses, clean air and trees and long brown fields that curved with the hills, like patches on a wrinkled blanket. I ran the winding roads to school in the spring and fall, ate rye soup and bread in our steamy kitchen when the snow was too deep. And every Sunday, snow or not, I rode to Mass in the village of Birka, piled in the back of a hay wagon with sisters and brothers, who eventually reached a total of 8. It was a perfect childhood, and I hated it. The pigsty stank, and so did the outhouse, the refuse pit, and the field workers plowing in the sun. I hated the piles of manure purposely hidden in the grass to spoil my shoes, the redness of my mother's hands after scrubbing the laundry or delivering another woman's baby, and I hated the irritating and incessant cluck, cluck, cluck of our chickens. They never stopped. I was sure they never slept, except for the rooster, who was insane, crowing again and again to the rising moon rather than the sun. I didn't mind plucking the chickens. I made my first bid for escape when I was 11. Mama took me on the mail cart to see 2 of my grown-up sisters, who had taken jobs in the city. A treat, she'd said, for my birthday, which was the Holy Week of Easter. We all had our birthdays on Easter, all 9 of us, or at least that's when we celebrated them. Mama didn't have time to remember our real birthdays, or our real names. I was never Stefania, I was Steffi, or Stefusha, or Stefushka, but mostly just Fusha. If I had 9 children, I wouldn't remember their names either. Mama paid the driver of the mail cart, then took my hand in hers. Her skin was rough and scratchy. Mama took good care of me, mostly, and so did my tata when he was alive. They took good care of all of us, but I didn't want to hold her hand. Sometimes I miss her hands now. I pulled and squirmed the rest of the way into Schmitz, and then I forgot all about the embarrassment of hand-holding. Wagons rumbling by on the paving stones, automobile horns bleating like sheep, a train screaming steam into the sky, and the clamor of the farm wives shouting the prices of their goods in the square was so much nicer than chickens. It was music, a brass band, a symphony. We went shopping in open-air booths and stores with glass-fronted windows. A dress for Mama, shoes for me, and a bonnet for baby Helena. I fingered red silk ribbons and the shiny silver wrapper of a chocolate bar. My sisters gave us an elegant lunch, meaning our meat came from a tin instead of the slaughter shed, on a clean tablecloth in the apartment they shared 3 stories above the street. Mama was gasping before we got there, but I wanted to run down the stairs just to climb back up them again. Mama and my sisters sipped tea while I pressed my nose to the window glass, drinking in the comings and goings of the street. And when it was time to go, I cried, begged, stamped, threatened, and pleaded to be left behind. I would sleep on the floor. I would sleep below the stairs. My sisters wouldn't mind. I would be no trouble. Only I was being nothing but trouble. I was dragged to the mail cart by Mama's rough hands. It was 18 months before she let me go back, and this time when I stepped into the noise of Schmitz, I was nearly 13. Older, wiser, I had outgrown the bust of my dress, and I knew how to play Mama's game. I had a whispered conversation with my sisters, bolstered by the letter I'd sent the month before. I wiped the corners of my mouth after lunch, crossed my legs, drank the tea, and listened while Mama talked. And when it was almost time to catch our cart, I told her I wouldn't be catching it. Mama begged. She pleaded. She even cried a little. She did not stamp her foot. I told her that Marisha had a job for me. "It's true, Mama," said Marisha. "Mrs. Diamant has been looking for a girl, just a few blocks away." That Anja had made up a cot behind the sofa. 2 blankets, Mama, and Mass every week, Anja said. I explained how I would give part of my wages to my sisters so they could feed me, how I would send even more back home to the farm so Mama could pay another farmhand, or buy more chickens. "Wouldn't that be such a help, Mama?" Marisha smiled. "But Fusha, what about your education?" dithered my mother. I smoothed my dress. "Schmitz will be my education, Mama." She got on the mail cart without me. I skipped to my first day of work at the Diamant's shop, putting the pigeons to flight, peeking in little alleys that tunneled between the buildings, staring in the window of a photography studio, and playing with a wandering cat. The cathedral bells rang across a sky that was a deep, perfect blue. When I pushed open the door to the shop, a much smaller bell tinkled, and a woman looked up from her perch behind a counter. The air smelled like fresh bread, apples, parcel paper and string, and I saw rows and rows of wrapped chocolates living behind glass. The woman looked me up and down while I bounced on my toes. Her bottom hung over both sides of her chair. "So," she said, "look at what the sunshine has brought to me. You are the Podgorska girl. What is your name, my Ketzela?" "Stefania." I thrilled at the sound of my real name. "And I am Mrs. Diamant. Do you read, Stefania?" "Yes, Mrs. Diamant." "Do you write?" I nodded. The farm wasn't that far away from the rest of the world. "Good, very good. Then you will please make a count of the items on my shelves." I stowed my coat and my lunch of bread and cheese in a corner behind the counter, and Mrs. Diamant handed me paper clipped to a board, a little stub of a pencil tied to one end. My shoes made a sharp clip-clip across the creaking floor, which sounded important and made me smile. I wrote the inventory in big, clear strokes. Mrs. Diamant worked rows of numbers in her book, observing, and when I scooted over a bottle of soda water, there were 2 brown eyes staring at me from the other side of the shelves. "Do you always sing while you count?" a voice said. A boy's voice, a deep one. I clutched my clipboard to my chest and flushed. I had been singing, to myself, like a little girl. I was a little girl, I just didn't know it yet. The eyes crinkled between the water bottles, and then they were gone. And then they were above the shelves, peering over the top. A tall boy, still thin from growing, 2 dark brows reaching for a mess of black and curling hair. He grinned. "Don't stop now," he said. "You're my morning entertainment. What's your name?" "Stefania." He cocked his head. "Nobody calls you that, do they?" They didn't. "So what did they call you? Steffi?" "Stefushka." He waited. "And Stefusha," I added, "and Fusha. But I'd rather be called Steffi, Stefushka, Stefusha, Fusha." The boy shook his head. "Too late. It's Fusha. Sing me another song, Fusha. Mama might start selling tickets." "Easy-o!" shouted Mrs. Diamant from her chair. "Leave the child alone, Boobala. It is her first day. Nemen dain tuki sushula. Mama, go to school." He shrugged and ran off, joining 2 more boys waiting for him at the shop door. One was taller and one was shorter, but they had the same dark hair, and all 3 were older than me. Brothers, I thought. I knew brothers. With brothers, it was best to give as good as you got. I turned back to my work, made a check mark on my paper, and at full voice began singing a tango that my mama switched off every time it came on the radio, which of course meant I listened to it every time I could. "Your words send me into the storm clouds. Your laughter is a cold and wet spell." I felt the room go tense with anticipation. "I don't want your windy words. I don't want your dripping laughter. I just want you to go to..." Only I didn't say the next word of the lyrics. I inserted the word school instead. Laughter burst out from behind my back, and I held in my smile while arms jostled one another and feet ran out the door, setting the shop bell tinkling. When I snuck a look at Mrs. Diamant, she was shaking her head, but her eyes were crinkly, just like her son's. And that became our ritual. Every morning, Isidore Diamant, more often known as Ezio, would stick his head in the shop and say, "Sing to me, Fusha," and I would make up a rude song that told him to go away. Within a week, everyone on Mikivika Street called me Fusha. I learned the other brothers' names. Henrik, the youngest, who had no time for me, and Max, the next step up from Ezio, who had already started an apprenticeship and smiled more often than he talked. There was another brother, Chaim, a physician studying in a town in Italy I'd never heard of, a sister not far away in Lvov, and Mr. Diamant, who stayed at home, recuperating from something that had to do with his blood. I learned that I would not work on Saturdays because the Diamants were Jewish, and that Mrs. Diamant made excellent babka. I swept the floors and wrapped parcels and dusted the shelves, and Mrs. Diamant said I was a quick learner. Before long, she was sending me on errands to the market square, where the real business was done, and it was there that I saw my first fight. 2 boys pummeling each other into the late summer dirt of the street gutter. This was not like the match-flare temper of my brothers, or the boys at my school in Birka. This was something ugly. A policeman squashed his cigarette on the sidewalk, watching, and then a man with dirty pants and a smear of grease on his cheek broke through the circle of observers and pulled the 2 boys apart by their shirt collars, both of them still hissing and spitting like cats. He shook the one in his right hand until I thought I heard teeth rattle. "What is wrong with you, Oscar?" the man said. "Why are you fighting in the street like a criminal?" "He hit me," Oscar managed. "Oh ho, he hit you, did he? He hit you for nothing?" The man looked to the other boy, and so did the crowd. The boy picked up his hat and wiped the blood from his nose. "He called me a dirty Jew." The man shook his head, then shook Oscar again. "What is the matter with you? Look at this boy." If Oscar could look, it was with his eyes crossed. "He has arms and legs and blood in his veins. What do you care if his family follows Moses? Now, shake this boy's hand. Do it, before I tell your mama." The boys shook hands, though they didn't look as if they wanted to, and when they parted ways and the crowd began to melt, I heard a woman behind me mutter, "Dirty Jew." I got a good bargain on plums from Mrs. Diamant, and when I ran back to the shop, I slipped through the door to the toilet and stood there looking in the mirror. I touched my face, the skin of my arm, and my brown hair. People hated that boy because he was a Jew. Could the Diamants hate me because I was a Catholic? That afternoon, I coaxed Mrs. Diamant down from her chair and into the exercises I'd seen the students doing outside the gymnasium. Some of the pretty wrapped chocolates went toppling from the shelves to the floor, and Mrs. Diamant laughed and laughed, mopping between the folds of her neck. "Sometimes, my Quetzala," I had discovered this meant little kitten, "the sunshine you bring is hot." Then she handed me a chocolate, her soft face dimpling as she unwrapped another for herself. And suddenly I knew that Mrs. Diamant had been lonely before I came to the shop, and that she wasn't lonely anymore. That I had been lonely on the farm, surrounded by brothers and sisters with lives of their own, a mother with too many cares, and a pen full of chickens, and I wasn't lonely anymore either. That Sunday, at Mass with Anja, I thanked God for the Diamants. Moses was in my Bible too, after all, and I felt certain that God had liked him. My education had begun. Ezio taught me rude songs in Yiddish, and I decided not to bring tinned ham sandwiches to the shop, even though Mrs. Diamant said she didn't mind. When the winter blew in and the dark came early, I ate my suppers around the corner in the Diamant's apartment, full of mostly grown boys talking medicine, and Mr. Diamant asking questions like, "Which is better, a good war or a bad peace?" And we would listen to their arguments while Mr. Diamant sat back and smoked cigarette after cigarette. Ezio would walk me home on those nights in deep, cold snow, lit golden by the streetlights. Mrs. Diamant did her exercises with me every morning. She had to take in her dresses. I had to let mine out. I learned how to smile at a boy so he would buy 2 chocolates instead of 1, and to smile even prettier when he put the second chocolate into my hand. Then, as soon as the shop bell tinkled, I would slip the chocolate back into the display, the coins into the register, and this made Mrs. Diamant chuckle. I pinned my hair into curls and borrowed my sister's lip rouge, humming while the radio blared the news that Germany had invaded Czechoslovakia. And when Anja went to Krakow, and Marisha wanted to take an apartment on the far side of the city, Mrs. Diamant just clicked her tongue, crinkled her eyes, and said, "So, you will live with us, my Quetzala." The Diamants did not have an extra room in their apartment, so they made me one at the end of the hallway, with a cot and a table, with a lamp on it, a mirror hung above that, and a maroon curtain strung from wall to wall for privacy. I propped my picture of Christ and the Virgin on one wall, and hung my rosary on the bedpost. And Mrs. Diamant kept a secret stash of blintzes under my bed, because Mr. Diamant didn't eat during Yom Kippur. It was a soft red lair in the lamplight. But there was no window in my lair, and so when the nights were hot, I crept out to the living room, where the window stayed open, letting out the stale smoke. I sat on the sill with the lights switched off, bare feet wedged against the frame, listening to the trains coming and going at the station, a sleepy apartment on one side, a long, dark drop into the city on the other. I didn't know then that fear comes with the dark. Ezio would come to me at the windowsill, sprawling in a chair or hands behind his head on the rug. He whispered about his new university classes, the parts of the world he most wanted to see, Palestine and Turkey, the parts of the world I most wanted to see, America. And he wanted to know my opinion on things, like if I thought Hitler would invade Poland. But wars were not the first, second, or even third thoughts in my mind on those nights. Ezio had turned 18. He'd filled in, grown up, and his eyelashes curled like soot smudged against his lids. Max came to the windowsill too, sometimes, that very last summer. He was smaller and quieter than his brother, but when he did talk, he made you think long, serious thoughts about your life, or told jokes so terrible it made your ribs hurt. Ezio wrapped his arms around his middle, trying to hold in the laughter so he wouldn't wake his mother. I loved it when Max made Ezio laugh. But after a while, Max didn't come to the window anymore. It was just Ezio and me while the rest of the world slept. I think Max knew before I did. Summer cooled to the final autumn, and when the leaves blew yellow past the windowsill and the air smelled like coal smoke, Ezio reached out and held my hand in the dark. We promised not to tell a soul. And 2 weeks after that, the first German bombs fell on Schmitz. And if you choose to check this book out, Chapter 3 is September 1939. I hope you enjoyed this little preview of The Light and Hidden Places, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for joining me for Teen Story Share. Bye.